Well, hi, folks. Tim Vatapka here, and I wanted to give you a little bit of information that we could not cover because of time constraints in our annual meeting back in July. And this has to do with the ongoing work that we're doing with Lakewise. Now, the fellow that you're going to hear from in this recorded webcast session is a fellow by the name of Abraham Ames, who lives with his wife in Brownington, not too far south of us. He enjoys both aquaculture and gardening. So, with a lifelong passion for both the outdoors and wildlife, he graduated from Green Mountain College with a degree in environmental science. Abe has worked quite a variety of jobs in conservation, but when he moved to a property down there with a relatively sizable pond, his interest in water quality management really took some focus. Well, about 3 years ago, he brought this interest to the local landscape while working for the Orleans County Natural Resources Conservation District. And while he was there, he was involved in local water quality initiatives and efforts and enjoyed the opportunity to conduct Lakewise assessments at both Willoughby and Caspian Lakes. Well, he recognized that the imminent need was there for water quality project implementers, so he left the OCNRCD and set off on his own as an independent contractor last summer, 2023. His business, Ames Ecologics LLC, specializes in invasive plant control, habitat and water quality restoration, improvement projects, and environmental consultation. Well, he certainly is thrilled for the chance to help the community manage another wonderful lake, and he has been contracted through the DEC-ANR, Agency of Natural Resources, to work with us on Lakewise. So with that, I give you Abe. I'll give you the recording that he and I did a little while ago. And if you have any questions on Lakewise, you can certainly reach us through our website. Contact information is all over the place on there. And if anybody has any questions about that or wants to speak to Abe, he's a very, very interested guy and enthusiastic about this program. He will speak to you, email back and forth, whatever you like. There's no charge to the community or the residents or property owners who are interested in Lakewise assessments. It only starts costing you money if you start doing major work like landscaping, planting, trees, shrubs, that sort of thing, or anything in terms of construction. So give it a listen. It's about 45 minutes long, and hang in there for it. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Enjoy the presentation.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim. Before I get started, I just wanted to give a special thanks to Tim. It's been great to help facilitate this, and also to the Lake Association in general. This is not my first time working with lake associations or lakes or doing a project like this, and the community involvement is just a huge component to the success of these kinds of projects. So far, it seems like you have a great lake association. The more people who are involved and care deeply, the better. And so I invite all of you guys to consider this a partnership. I don't want to just be out there doing this blindly without, being in a relationship with the lake association. The more that you can be involved, the more successful this will be. So feel free to give me a call, give me an email, talk to me. I want to be a partner to the Lake Association and to the water quality efforts in general. So this is not just happening in a vacuum. I'm not just going to be there in the background going to people's properties. I would like for this to be as much of a partnership and a back and forth as possible. So Tim did a great job of introducing myself. I don't think there's a whole lot more to say, other than the fact that I've done this a couple of times. I'm really excited to be doing this at a really close lake to me. My wife grew up in Coventry, and so Salem Lake was a place that she'd always go to. And it is, it's a local water body as far as I'm concerned. So I'm really glad to be able to work in my own backyard, so to speak. Before I go on, I would like to introduce or at least mention the other partners who are involved in this project. I guess I'll just start out by saying that this was a DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation initiative. They do a lot of different work on lakes right now. Allison Marchione is the Lakeshore Manager and Lakeshore or Lakewise Coordinator. She should be on the call. Feel free to ask any questions that might pertain to her. She should be available to answer them. So the DEC decided to fund this initiative, which is 20 Lakewise assessments. They put out an RFP, I submitted a bid, and I was selected through that process. And so, like I said, what this funds is the 20 assessments, and a large component of that, and something that they're looking for, are fundable projects. So I'm going to be talking with you guys about your specific property, but I'm also going to be out there looking for projects that meet that phosphorus reduction criteria that makes them eligible for public funding. Another one of our partners on this project is Ben Copans, the technical basin planner, and I think it's fair to also call him the basin or watershed manager for Emperor Magog, which is the watershed that Lake Salem is in. Ben gave me a couple of notes that he thought would be worthwhile to share with you guys concerning your lake, just to help it bring into focus that your lake is not isolated from the watershed. It's very integrated, above and below, and it all filters into Emperor Magog. So he would like for me to say that Lake Salem has increasing nutrient trends and also ongoing concerns with low dissolved oxygen levels, which may be exacerbated by elevated nutrient levels that can increase algae growth and take up oxygen when they decompose at the bottom of the lake. So that's one of the more concerning things that you can consider imperiling your lake. Lake Salem is a part of the Lake Memphis-Magog watershed, which is impaired for phosphorus, and so there's a cleanup plan called the Total Maximum Daily Load, which requires the state basically to reduce phosphorus across the watershed to restore water quality conditions. The total maximum daily load requires a reduction of phosphorus flowing into Lake Memphis-Magog by 29%. That's a huge number. In order to achieve that, we basically need to address every phosphorus issue we can put our finger on. And it's not going to work if it's just project managers and water quality implementers out there doing work. It's going to be a community effort. So really, everyone in the watershed, if we're going to achieve this, needs to be considering how their property impacts the water quality of the watershed. So that 29% is further broken down by reductions of 18% for developed lands, 46% for agricultural lands, 5% for forests, and 23% for stream adjustment processes in order to meet that goal. So I guess I want to stress that there are multiple sectors that are being addressed. Agriculture is a huge one. That's what I worked with mainly at the Conservation District. There are a lot of programs out there to get farmers to improve their practices to reduce the amount of phosphorus that their management is contributing to the watershed. And also, it's everywhere. Studies have shown that even in uninhabited forest lands, phosphorus inputs are increasing. They're assuming that that's a result of climate change. But basically, everywhere in the watershed, we're getting this increased phosphorus. And so in order to meet that lower phosphorus reduction, which is important in order for the longevity of Lake Memphis-Magog in particular, there are many things that need to be addressed. So the efforts to meet the reductions for the Lake Memphis-Magog total maximum daily load should also help reduce phosphorus loading to Lake Salem. And the Lakewise assessments and projects are one aspect of that. The Memphremagog Watershed Association is also focused on a lot of stream restoration projects across the larger watershed, and there is ongoing work with farms and towns and roads, so really every sector. And I'll take a moment and just say the Memphremagog Watershed Association has done a lot of work on the Clyde River, which is where you guys get a lot of your water. So Lake Salem is identified in the Tactical Basin Plan as a priority for the development of a Lake Watershed Action Plan, which would be a study of two further identified lakeshore and watershed projects that could reduce nutrient loading to Salem Lake. So one issue with that is that Salem Lake watershed is huge. It goes all the way from Island Pond. And so in order to really roll out a Lake and Watershed Action Plan, they might have to kind of adjust that idea. And like I said, there's already work going on in the watershed. So I'm kind of assuming that, them funding these Lakewise assessments was kind of a way of doing a little bit of a Lake and Watershed Action Plan without going all the way. So that's just some background information, some technical info from the Tactical Basin Planner. Other partners on this project are the Memphremagog Watershed Association. They are project managers. Like I said, they've worked in the Clyde. They're doing a fair amount of work in the watershed in general. And so any projects that I identify, I'm going to be speaking with them, and hopefully they will pick up those projects and manage them. The other partner is the Orleans County Conservation District, who fit that description also. They manage water quality projects, and so when I identify projects, I'm going to be reaching out to them as well. One note with them, they wanted me to mention, I'm sorry, I invited both those entities to be here, but this is Saturday, they were busy. The district wanted me to also mention that they're hiring a lake project manager who is just going to be focusing on water quality stuff. So they're spread a little bit thin. They're doing a lot of different things right now. So they do a lot of work with agriculture, but they're going to be hiring a lakes person to just focus on that. So you might get some more personalized attention from them in the near future. See, and so the last partner that I have on the call is Daniel Johns, who is the Clean Water Program Manager for this watershed. He's going to say a few words about his program coming up, but he is essentially here to represent the public funding options, which, like I said, is going to be a big component of this project. Like I said, there are a lot of initiatives going around. Seymour and Echo have both had lake watershed action plans. Willoughby, Caspian, I think I'm forgetting one, but there are a lot of lakes in our county, and there's quite a bit of focus on them. Even though a lot of them are very clean and good as it is, the state is interested in keeping them that way. So you're not alone. And I want to stress the fact that this work that I'm doing here is tied into the greater picture. So it's not just your lake, really it's from Memphremagog, but there are a lot of initiatives happening, and this is just one component. Okay, so I'm gonna just run through what I'm gonna be doing with you guys. So this is a completely voluntary program. I don't work for the state. I've been contracted by them to do this. And so what that process is going to look like is you guys reaching out to me, either give me a call, give me an email, or you can reach out to the Lake Association and they can coordinate with me. But I need you guys to tell me and invite me out to your property. I'll come out and let's see. Tim, do you want to throw up that first, that Word doc that I shared with you? Okay, so this is what I'm going to assess. You'll invite me out to your property. I will meet you there, and then there are different sections that we're going to run through. There's the driveway, and Tim, you can just quickly scroll through this, and I'll mention each sector. So I'm going to be looking at these different parts of your property, and what I'm going to be looking for are sources of erosion or areas where water is flowing over land rather than infiltrating into the ground. And so, like I said, that's driveway, and these things are numerically evaluated. So I'm giving you a score for each section based on 0 to 3 or 4. And it all fits into this criteria. So we'll look at the driveway, we'll look at your structures, look at the recreation area, look at your shoreline, and score each section. And like I said, this is all been written out and evaluated, so I'm not going off script here. And I will give you a score, and each section I will talk to you about what's going well, what could be improved. I will give you recommendations. Happy to answer any questions, and also provide technical assistance. I've been trained on these practices, so as long as it's something that doesn't require like engineering, I can talk to you about what the correct approach should look like. And so that might end up looking like something you guys can just do. You know, it might be something as simple as like not mowing an area or planting a few plants. Or it might be something that you might want to hire a landscaper for. I can help you find a good person for that also. And then also provide, like I said, the technical information so that you know what the results should look like and how to do them. And then if there is something serious enough which can be calculated to represent a certain phosphorus input, that could qualify for public funding. And so I'll talk to you about that, see if you're interested in it. And you know, Nathaniel will speak about this, but some of those options are pretty good. They really just require your consent for us to come in and do those projects, and nothing else, no match. There are a few different options, but there are some good public funding options out there. So I'll document that, make sure that you're okay with me presenting it to the project managers, and then they'll pick them up and seek the appropriate funding source. One thing that I want to mention in association with that, which has been a point that other people have brought up in these projects in the past, is that those publicly funded processes are slow. If I identify a project on your property and I'm seeking funding for it, you should not expect to see anything happen that year. It's possible, and especially as things get streamlined and these things are set up for us to be more nimble, it's possible, especially going forwards. But certain programs can take a year or more before anything happens. So I just want you to go into that knowing that I'm going to be out there. I'm looking for fundable projects, but that does not mean that you should look for anything happening until like next year at the soonest. So the timeline is very slow, but there is a lot of willpower behind them. There are a number of people who really want to pick them up and run with them. So they're not going to get dropped or forgotten about. But just bear with us because the process is slow. And one last thing that I want to mention before I move on regarding what I'm doing there is that I don't work for the state, and I am not regulatory. I am not there to tattle on anyone. I don't know local zoning codes, and quite frankly, for my purposes, you know, me being successful in this project is going to require the goodwill and trust of the community. I don't want to do anything to compromise that. So it would have to be an extraordinary set of circumstances for me to think that I had to report any violations that I saw. I'm sure that you're familiar with Act 250. I am sure that the Lake Association is, and all of your neighbors can see your lakeshore property anyway. So it's very unlikely that I'm going to see anything that I feel like I need to report. And quite frankly, if I do, I would go to the Lake Association anyway and leave it in their hands. So I just want to assuage any concerns people might have, which are legitimate, and if it was different, I would agree, about inviting someone from the state out to inspect your property. That's not something I would want to do unless I had to, and that's not what's happening here. So this is a carrot kind of program. There are the regulators, they have the stick. And quite frankly, with them also, that is not their preferred tool. In my experience, they like working with landowners because what they want to achieve is water quality. They're not out there trying to collect fines or slap people on the wrist. That's probably their least favorite part of the job, and I think it's their last tool in their toolbox in order to achieve water quality efforts. So really, I can't imagine a scenario where I'm invited out to your property and I report on or document something that's coming back that could come back and bite you guys. There is a database which will be uploaded with information that Tim just shared on the screen there. As you can see, it's like numerical values. So it's not going to be saying like, oh, such and such built a shed on their property, and I don't know if it comports with the regulations. None of that will be recorded. It's all just like numerical criteria. So there's really no danger of regulatory repercussions you guys could face from inviting me out there. And quite frankly, I wouldn't really be interested in doing this work if that weren't the case. I'm really just there to share information with you guys, give you guys the info you need in order to manage your property well to protect the water quality. Which I'll mention is not rocket science. It's all stuff that's easily understood. A lot of it can be, not what people expect, but I've done a number of these, and when I'm out there talking with people about what they can do, I can see it clicking and they understand. And by the time I left, for the most part, people have a good picture of what good water quality management looks like. And that's our goal. And then you guys can spread that information with your neighbors. And if you guys are all doing that on your lake, I think that, especially with the work that's going on in Clyde, you'll see results. Okay. Oh, I also want to mention that me completing these 20 assessments and then submitting the projects to the project managers is not the end of the involvement with this project. They're going to pick those projects up and run with them. I might be involved with that also. I'm a project implementer with the local basin water quality project or service provider. So it may make sense for me to come out there and be working on those projects. But I'm here to integrate into your community and be a partner with you guys for your water quality efforts. So you can consider me a state liaison or conduit to more water quality projects, information, what have you. Feel free to talk to me. I want to be a partner to you guys and not just out there doing these assessments. And that work will continue at the conclusion of this project. All right. So I kind of touched on this, but there are several funding opportunities. I guess this might be a good time for Nathaniel to say a few things about his program. He can do a better job than me. So yeah, Nathaniel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me on this meeting today. As Abraham said, my name is Nathaniel Johns. I'm the Clean Water Program Manager at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And we are what's called the Clean Water Service Provider for MEM for Magog. And what that means is that we oversee a program that funds projects that reduce phosphorus into water bodies. It's called the Water Quality Restoration Formula Grant. So the way this process works, Abraham kind of explained it a bit, is that as a result of these assessments, a project manager will come to us with a proposed project. So these kinds of projects can be things like stream and shoreline stabilization, tree plantings, small dam and culvert removals, trail stabilization, wetland restoration. It's quite a variety. The main criteria, again, is just that it will have a substantial phosphorus reduction. For projects that are not phosphorus related, what happens is they go to another program called the Enhancement Grant, and that is managed by Watersheds United Vermont. So there are a lot of benefits to this program for landowners. One of the main ones is that, and Abraham touched on this, the landowner does not have to front any money for these projects. Generally, with federal programs, the way it works is the landowner has to pay for the project upfront, and then they're reimbursed at a certain rate, generally 70%. And that's not how this works. The only thing that we need from landowners is for them to agree to the project on their property, and then also to allow the relevant parties access to the site. And part of this includes what's called operations and maintenance. So that can be for several years after the project is implemented. So they have to allow access for that maintenance period as well. But that's really the extent of the paperwork from the landowner that we need. So kind of the main point I wanted to get across today is that, as Abraham mentioned, this really needs to be a community effort. There's a lot of money available right now for this work, so funding is not really the issue. The issue is finding willing landowners who are on board with this work. So yeah, you know, that's really kind of the biggest hurdle that we face with this. And frankly, the scale of projects that we've been doing in Vermont is currently not commensurate with the level of pollution that's entering these lakes. We really need to scale up that effort, and that means that we need more community involvement. So if that's something people are interested in, you know, you can feel free to reach out to Abraham or myself or one of these other organizations. We all work very closely together on these projects. It's really a collaborative effort. So yeah, feel free to let me know if you have any questions about this program or the way this process works.
So thanks, Nathaniel. You know, listening to that, I want to bring up the point that there's a fair amount of expertise in this watershed. We have actually some kind of hard-hitting professionals. We're kind of lucky in this area. And there are people who are very devoted to this watershed as well. So I'm thankful for that. And I think that we can do a lot of things for water quality efforts, and we are eager to do them on Salem Lake. Oh, I didn't specify this before. It is both Big and Little Salem that I'll be working on. So I know there's some large landowners on Little Salem, a lot of smaller landowners on large or bigger. But feel free to reach out to me if you live on either lake. And you know, one thing Nathaniel said also that made me think, if you have a serious issue on your property, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you think it's too serious, or if you don't want to reveal it or something, we're looking for those big issues. And those big issues are things that are more easily fundable. So really, there are a couple of measures of success or takeaways that we'd love to see achieved with this project. One is reaching a critical mass of the community and just imparting this knowledge and education upon them so that they can do the right things with their property and then spread that knowledge and awareness through the community. And that's how everyone will learn the proper way to manage their property for water quality. And the other are projects that we can fund and then consider to represent significant phosphorus reductions, because ultimately that's the goal. And actually, Tim, we skipped over this, but would you mind sharing that image that I gave you of the lake scorecard? Yeah, there we go. So this is just a graphical representation of what's been going on. As you can see, the total phosphorus load is not super significant yet, but it is increasing in trend. And especially if you look at the summer phosphorus level from 2000 to 2020, there's a very identifiable upward trend. And so it's still, okay, I'll go through this. So an oligotrophic lake is one whose nutrients are so low that they don't really impact the water. There's not much algae growth. Even on like rocks, they don't get like slippery. And I think there are only a couple lakes like that in Vermont, and I believe Caspian and Willoughby both count as oligotrophic, though they might be on that threshold. As you can see, you guys left that threshold a little while ago, and you are in the mesotrophic area, which is what most lakes are. That means that you'll have some algae growth, some weed growth. What you're hoping to avoid is the eutrophic state, because at that point you will have algae blooms, you'll have issues with dissolved oxygen, there will be weed flare-ups. And if you consider the lakes that are like choked with like Eurasian milfoil and stuff like that, they're warm. They have a lot of like particles in the water. You can't see very far. Those are usually your eutrophic lakes. And they're not very attractive for swimming or water quality. It impacts the habitat, so fishing. It might be insurmountable to bring your lake back to oligotrophic. But through these efforts, we should be able to keep it where it is, so that it halts that upward trend. And that's what we want, to be able to keep the lake the way that it is, because it is experiencing a change. And if it is not addressed, it is just a matter of time. And unfortunately, that's the case with most lakes in Vermont. I'm not sure if you guys have heard this information, but Vermont has some of the densest lake residencies in the country. It's actually more densely populated than Burlington. So Vermont was late to the game in terms of addressing their lake water quality issues and regulating them. So with that, I'm just going to briefly touch on permitting and regulations. I don't want to get too deep into this, especially if Allison is on the call, because she knows all about this. I don't want to say something wrong. Feel free to ask any questions, because we should have the expertise here to answer them. But I'm just, going to briefly say, I think in terms of permitting and regulation, you can just keep in your mind that if you're working within 250 feet of the water line and you are clearing an area or putting in an impervious surface like a driveway or a structure, you should call your local permitter and just check with them to see if it's something that requires a permit. It may or it may not. It's better to check beforehand than for them to come out afterwards. Like I said, they're usually very willing to work with landowners. So it's not, it's not like calling the police on yourself and seeing if you've committed a crime or something. They like people reaching out to them, and really that's all it takes is a call or an email asking them if what you want to do requires a permit. And the local person who does that is Laura Woods. I don't know if Allison is here and she can pop her info into the chat, that would be great. Otherwise, I'll look for it. So if you're working within 250 feet of the watermark on land, and you're clearing or putting in an impervious surface, that might require a permit. And if you're working within the water itself, that kind of always requires a permit check. So if you're altering anything underneath the water, thank you, do give them a call. And a lot of the times it's just going to be super simple. It'll be a yes, as long as it's not something that's going to impact water quality, or it might require a permit, and Laura will be more than happy to work with you. And like I say, it's much better to work with her beforehand than afterwards, because they're not out there to stop you from doing what you want to do. They're really just out there to protect the water quality. And so they can help you adjust your plans to that, or permit your activity, or what have you. They will probably be less interested in kind of throwing you, something that they might not be willing to normally, if they're called out there afterwards rather than beforehand. So you can work with them. They're people just like us, and they don't like, slapping people with fines. That's not what they're out there to do. Okay, so I believe I have covered who I am, who the partners are, the backgrounds to the funding, how this fits into other water quality work, what it actually is going to look like that I'll be doing, funding opportunities, and the regulations. And so before I open it up to questions, I'll just reiterate that if you want a Lakewise assessment on your property, email me, give me a call. You can reach out to Lakewise or to the Lake Association as well, and they can coordinate with me. But that's what it takes, just get in contact with me. And then also, for the people who are on this call, it would be wonderful if you could share this information with your neighbors. If there's anyone who's considering it or maybe hesitant, maybe you could talk with them about what I've said today, or have them get in contact with me, happy to answer any questions. And so, yeah, the more that you guys are able to get the word out to your neighbors, the better this process is going to go, and the more that we will be able to deliver in this water quality effort. So with that, I'd like to thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you coming out and listening to what I have to say. And I would love to take any questions that you guys have.
Excellent. Thank you so much for putting this together, Abe. And we do have a couple of things that showed up in the chat. And first, I'll start with the contact info, which was laura.woods@vermont.gov is the best way to contact Laura. And again, she is the permitting specialist for the Northeast region in that area. And everything that we are discussing here today and more will be on our website. Abe, I didn't get the chance to talk to you about this, but you and I will coordinate after this webcast and put some other assets on a special section just for Lakewise content on our site over the next few weeks, and including any other references and aids and other presentations that are relevant to this. So folks, do make a point around July 4th weekend. Maybe it could be a good time to visit the site and also visit our socials, because this is a hot item and people are interested. A couple of questions. First off, Does using soaps, laundry without phosphorus help?
That is a good question. I'm going to do the safe thing here and say I don't know. I think that would be a better question for one of the more active scientists here. Allison may have a good answer to that. Based on my understanding, okay, I'll say it like this. So phosphorus, the way that it works, and one of the things that makes it so difficult to control is that it binds very tightly to particles. That's just how it acts. It is kind of rare to find it in water-soluble state. And so it is not just flowing through the water. It doesn't attach the water the way that nitrogen does and then just dissolve into that water column. Phosphorus sticks to particles. And so if you're putting that into a septic system, and as long as that septic system is functioning properly, and I think that might be the key to this answer, I don't think that that will have a huge impact on the lake. Now, what is happening is that you're putting a lot of phosphorus into the soil around your septic system. And so if that becomes eroded and then goes into the lake, you'll have a phosphorus input that way. But so long as everything's functioning properly, I don't think that there would necessarily be a direct link between your detergent and phosphorus entering the water. That being said, I don't think you should ever count on things in nature working 100%. So, quite frankly, if I was living on a lake that I was concerned about like that, I would probably use safe detergents. But there is not, it's not a hard and fast link, but I think it's a potential one. And really you'd want a scientist to say that. And here we have probably a better answer than mine, which I'll go ahead and read. Agree with Abe, but if you have gray water using an outdoor shower or are using soaps to wash or spray a car or something similar, that would be a bigger problem. Yeah. Oh, and Allison can't unmute herself. She'll need Tim to do that. But that's a good point. If you're washing your car or an outdoor shower or anything that's flowing over the land, then yes, that can definitely reach the water. Even if what you're doing doesn't go far enough out into your lawn, to get to the water, even if it's percolating before then, it's still leaving that phosphorus on the surface. And so rainwater is going to be able to pick up those particles and bring them with them. So that's a good point. If you're using something that's not going into your septic system, I think you would definitely want to use a low phosphorus soap. Yeah.
Allison, I'm not sure if you're on the line because I got a couple of multiple Abraham Ames on my console. So we have green lights across the microphone, so give it a try.
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Happy to answer any questions. Great presentation, Abe.
Great.
Thanks, Allison.
We have another question that I'm going to just leave it there, but I don't think you're going to be able to address it in the venue we've got going on. But it gives me pause to think we should probably put together a little video outside of this. And the question is, can you give us an example of projects you would find at the time that you're doing inspection? So I guess that leads to maybe some examples where you and I can get together and maybe do a little footage where you're going to walk through and do a site assessment. Maybe I'll get you on camera doing that. I think that's what the question is targeting.
Yeah, and maybe I'll talk with Allison to see if there are any photos of fundable projects that I can share. The most discernible and easy one to spot are sources of erosion or anywhere where there's bare soil on the shoreline. What we like to see on the shoreline the ideal thing is a forest with roots that are holding rocks together on the shore. That's kind of the most resilient situation that you can find. which that's what nature does. It's very stable. That holds up to ice, waves, rain. Is very resilient to erosion. And so really the biggest red flag fundable project that we can see would be a source of just bare soil, especially if it's like a cutoff and it's going right into the water and water is hitting it and creating further erosion. Also areas, we found where like people access their water regularly. It might be on like a steep hillside that they're walking down to get to the water. Just that foot traffic can cause erosion and prevent vegetation from growing. So really, what the red flag is bare soil near the water, especially if it's at an angle where it's eroding. If there's water that's being funneled to it and washing over the surface, that's kind of the biggest thing. That's a direct source, because I kind of touch on this, but so the phosphorus is binding to particles, and the smaller the particles, you can kind of consider the more mass of phosphorus that's there. So if you have like a bare kind of clay soil that's going right down into the water, that's a really good opportunity for rain or wave action to bring those particles in, and that's how the phosphorus is coming into the lake from your properties. Yeah, so just to answer that question briefly, it's bare soil, especially near the water, and then erosion.
Great.
And there, sorry to go on a little more. And so the funding sources have calculators that have all of these inputs. And so there are other things as well, if it's like at a big enough scale. We might want to do like a buffer planting if you have like a steep hillside that's just going into the water. Even if that's stable, adding buffer plants along the shoreline will just reduce the amount of rainwater that's flowing over the surface. Yeah, so those are the kind of projects that we look like. Anytime that you have bare soil and water that's able to run over them and go directly into the lake.
All right, cool. Well, again, we have a lot of work to do because there's obviously some education here and further enlightenment, and we'll be putting a lot of that material together on the site as we get further into the summer. And other than that, if there are any other questions, Abe, I'm sure that there will be, as folks look at the recording and listen to it. There might be some other things that come to mind. I will put your contact information in that section of the site so that they can get directly with you with any questions that may come up after we're done here. And that's it for as far as we're concerned. Thanks again for joining, and Abe, thanks again for spending the time with us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And yeah, I'm here. I'm here for you guys. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
All right. Cheers, everyone.